Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Lots of discussion lately as to who were the best players during the Modern Warfare 2 season, and therefore who might be the best going into Modern Warfare 3. Octane, as we saw yesterday, gave his thoughts on this, kind of mentioning 9 players that he considers to be kind of like the top 9 range. Shotzzy, though, wasn't mentioned by Octane, but Attach says, based on some clips that he saw the other day, that Shotzzy is certainly one of the great SMGs in the game, and honestly, from a movement perspective, is absolutely clear and far and away number 1. Does that mean with the way the new game will go, especially with Pred alongside him, that he's going to be the best SMG in the game again? Very much enjoyed to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. First of all, wanted to mention a couple of birthdays going around. Slash's birthday was yesterday, and it was also Kenny's birthday as well on the same day. Kind of funny because they were a duo together for some time. So maybe like, I must have seen this before, but I guess I just kind of forgot that they have the same birthday. So happy birthday to them both. I did think this was kind of funny actually here from Drazah. So he says, happy birthday, duo at Kenny. Dad, but appreciate it, kid. So, you know, it's all love between these two, but I am really looking forward to seeing how this will go because, look, Kenny and Drazah, they get on well, they've got a good relationship, but they absolutely will want to beat each other next season, and it just adds on even further to the OpTic versus FaZe rivalry. Yes, you lose a little bit of the Thieves versus FaZe rivalry, but the OpTic versus Thieves rivalry still kind of exists for the new season nicely, and FaZe OpTic gets arguably even better because, you know, in addition to all the great storylines between those two teams over the last couple of seasons, you've now got Drazah versus Kenny to add another kind of layer to those stories for next year, which is going to be good stuff. So yeah, I thought this is pretty funny, to be fair. And yeah, as we well know, OpTic have beaten FaZe pretty much every time they played them for the last couple of years. Despite the fact that FaZe on average have better tournament placings, OpTic just always had their number. Now FaZe's team this year is obviously going to be different to a certain extent, but and Drazah has basically, what did he say in that flank episode? He said, like, yeah, whenever we play OpTic first time, we're going to beat them 100% guaranteed. So I'm sure Kenny has a slightly different opinion of that. There was also this from Temp kind of wishing Kenny happy birthday here, which is pretty entertaining. I did see some discussion going around on Temp because I don't know what his current perspective is, but I saw some people giving their thoughts on this on Reddit, and actually this was an opinion that Octane gave a little while ago now, right, where he said that if you have an opportunity to play in the CDL, you take it 100% guarantees. And this is the thing for Donnie Temp. He's going to be an AR player. He wants to be in that flex position. His options are, because he will have offers, like Vegas, I'm sure, would take him back, right? I mean, I don't really know why they wouldn't when they finally come around to actually deciding their team. But, you know, you've got Vegas, you've got London, you've got Gorillas, and then you've got Challengers as an option. Now, if you go to Challengers, you ain't getting paid, right? Okay, you might win some tourneys down there, but you're not getting paid. The idea is bide your time in Challengers with no buyout, at which point a Surge, you know, Boston, a Minnesota, maybe even a Subliners, but I think it's a little bit unlikely, make a change, and then Donnie Temp is the best option to pick up, as he would be in those scenarios. The issue is, you look at those teams. Now, you know, I'm kind of excluding the top 4. There is maybe a chance that Sib doesn't work on New York, but I mean, look, I think they'll just give Sib time to make it work in that role. I think it's unlikely that New York would, like, drop Sib for Temp or something mid-season. So then you're kind of looking at Minnesota Rocker. They've got Accuracy and Awakening. You know, maybe there's a chance they make a change there. Surge, I mean, they've already got enough ARs on Surge. That's probably not going to happen. And then Boston, they've got Slasher Priestahh. I don't expect them splitting up that duo in the middle of the season. So, you know, teams that are actually middle of the pack to good, I'm just not sure I see them making a change where Temp could fit in by, you know, Major 2, Major 3. Maybe Thieves. Thieves is like the one team that I see. It's possible that if Ghosty, Cammy, if Ghosty, you know, who knows, if there's some friction internally there, they might turn back to Temp, because he used to be on Thieves back in the day. So there's a chance, there is potentially a slim chance that mid-season Temp gets a good opportunity on a good team. But I think it's relatively unlikely that that would be the case. It could happen for sure, and that is the ideal case scenario if Temp wants to go to Challengers and ride or die. But then again, you've got to weigh up the other side of it, where if you're getting paid by Vegas, London, or Gorillas to play in the CDL, you know, at that top level, maybe you prove yourself there better. And a team like Vegas, they, you okay, there will be some sort of buyout involved, but if, let's say, Subliners really wanted Temp or Thieves really wanted Temp, they could come to an arrangement there with Vegas. Like, they're not going to ask for some sort of crazy buyout, So does the benefit of being in challenges really exist? Octane would say, no, just take the money and play on the tier 1 level rather than make zero money and play on the tier 2 level, where if you don't win every tournament, you actually might get forgotten about a little bit. So, this is the tricky part for Temp, but I think in general, my opinion would be just take the offer. You know what I mean? Like, if there's an offer, I would just go for it personally. But, and Temp a few weeks ago maybe had a different opinion on that. Maybe he's changed his mind now. We'll see. Speaking of Octane, this was an interesting stat as well to note, that the last 2 players to join Thieves after being dropped by OpTic, and Octane did effectively get dropped by OpTic after the World War II season ended going forwards. He went on to join 100 Thieves at the time and went on to win at numerous championships for the team, as did Envoy. So, yes, this year's team isn't as good as the 100 Thieves team from Black Ops 4, theoretically, and isn't as good as the LA Thieves team from especially Vanguard, but nonetheless, Ghosty will become the 3rd player in the matter of a few years to join Thieves after leaving or getting dropped as he did from OpTic, and maybe there's more success in that team's future than you might well expect. Octane's been given some interesting thoughts over the last few days, as he's done a lot of since he retired, which is good for us as a community, and even JP Krez, analyst for OpTic, was given his thoughts on whether respawn in-game leaders actually work. So this concept of an IGL is quite a controversial one. I think for certain players it can work to actually be the in-game leader, but there's a thought that for most teams probably that don't have like a real dedicated IGL, that it's kind of the communication needs to be spread across the players, especially in a respawn mode. In Search and Destroy, fine, you can have like one shot caller who makes the decisions every round, but even then you probably want to be open. Like, let's say you're an AR and you're the shot caller in Search and Destroy, but yet your SMG player has gone in first 3 out of the first 4 rounds and has discovered a weakness or thinks that he has a way to exploit an issue in their defense, and then, he should be able to propose those ideas, right, back to the in-game leader. But in respawn, in hardpoint, you've got to imagine that things are moving so quickly that it kind of is on everyone to make some decisions. And that seemed to be JP's perspective, that kind of whoever's in there and in the mix, they should kind of give some thoughts on what to do next. But Octane actually says that depending on the team, and maybe if you're an absolute unit of communication like Octane is, then you kind of, everyone, someone can do that. As he says, the term IGL is overblown in cards, but respawn IGLing can be done. It just has to be the result of efficient scrimmers reps and a game plan. Even if you're out of the player, like he said in the video, you can still direct based on what's expected in each hold or break. Obviously, pivots from gunfights and holds in the setup have to be made, but IGLing in respawn can be done, and JP is like, yeah, to a certain extent I agree, but I think there's very few that can actually do that at a pro level, and Octane's probably like, yeah, like, I'm one of those guys. It's definitely a high awareness kind of thing that's not every team is going to have. It's definitely more efficient to have multiple good communicators, as you mentioned. Most of the time, I did it because the less your teammates have to think about, the better they shoot, which is an interesting way of looking at things. So yeah, Octane's a really interesting perspectives here on the way Call of Duty can be played if you have certain types of players on your team. And maybe in the same way that not having Karma do anything with the OpTic team for some time was a bit of a loss. Maybe you could say the same thing for Octane. I'm not saying that Octane needs to step in as a coach, but maybe Octane being around the team a little bit, doing a little, speaking with the guys from now and then could be beneficial, because I'm sure Octane has a lot of wisdom to impart on that Los Angeles Thieves roster, especially some of the newer guys, in the same way that I think Karma does for the OpTic guys and many other retired players do for organizations they may still be a part of. So definitely something to be said there on Octane's part. But also what he did say, as we looked at yesterday, well, it was actually a video I made a few days ago, but then all the roster announcements came through, on his effectively top 5 players. So he gave his list of top 5, which was pretty much very similar to what we just had in MW2, and this new game might be very similar to what we just played. But it might not be, and there's obviously talk about the movement and other changes as well. He also gives honourable mentions to a couple of the OpTic guys, Kenny, Kismet, Simp, but and I imagine that if he had to choose a 10th here, he'd probably have said Shotzzy. But he didn't mention Shotzzy in the video, which definitely, to me at least, raised some questions as to the fact that Shotzzy MVP during the 2020 season, considered one of the most impactful SMG players in the game, hands down. down, if not one of the most impactful players in the game, hands down, over the last couple of years. Not mentioned here by Octane, thought it was pretty interesting. Now, Attach gives his thoughts, actually, and pretty much says, you know, he's not responding to Octane directly, but he's looking at some clips and saying that these are the type of things that make Shotzzy different to basically anybody else. Now, I mean, nobody makes this play like Shotzzy makes this play, you know what I mean? And Attach breaks this down and says, look how much time it wasted for this player. This is one of the reasons why Shotzzy is just so difficult to deal with compared to pretty much everybody else.
The funniest thing, now Pred and Shotzzy are teaming, but Pred loses the most fool about it. Yo, he just did a backwards dive. But look, it's like those little things, like, bro, just look at, like, imagine if Shotzzy just died right here. Like, bang, he dies right there. But he's just buying extra time. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds, 6 seconds. Like, it's just taking players out of the play for so long. That's why it's so good to just, those extra seconds in Call of Duty are so separates the good SMGs from the great ones. Like, being able to get a kill and then stay alive for those extra couple seconds, buy your team more time to get back to you. That's literally the most important, like, thing. That's what separates the good from the greats, especially movement-wise in S&D, in order to, in general. But yeah, now Shotzzy movement is different from everyone.
So does that necessarily make Shotzzy the best SMG in the game? Not necessarily. It's kind of difficult to say. This past season, of course, it was HyDra hands down, but you do get, as you know, we've just talked about with IGLs, you get different players in different roles. HyDra was clear this year. I mean, absolutely no doubt about it. He was ridiculous this entire season long, and well, in the numbers, absolutely played that out as well. Pred was also insane, but on a team that had less success even than OpTic did, and then aBeZy was really back to form this year, especially in the Search and Destroy. So you can't really look past any of those guys. But outside of that, you've got to say Shotzzy's up there. And it's always difficult in the same way that it's difficult to really determine how much an in-game leader does, how important they are for the team. It's kind of difficult to say how important certain SMG players are. But I think there's certain players like CleanX and also like Shotzzy that just make their teammates really good relative to them. I think one of the reasons why Hook was able to come into OpTic and do so much better than he did with respect to what he was doing on Los Angeles Grilles is because of Shotzzy. I think Ghosty also has some benefit there as well, but I think that, you know, CleanX will make your team, like whoever CleanX's SMG duo is, will typically look really, really good, and that's not just them playing well in that system, that's helped by CleanX's play himself. And I think it's the same story in large part for Shotzzy. Like, I think Pred could do some ungodly things the next couple of seasons if he's teaming with Shotzzy the entire time, because Shotzzy just makes the entire job of his team easier, even though his numbers, I mean, if we look at the numbers, okay, 90 overall, great, you know, kills, damage, stuff like this, but it's not like his KD's anything insane. But, you know, his KD doesn't need to be, I mean, this KD, for example, for Shotzzy, if he could do this again this year, they will be cooking, right? Because he's going to get lots of engagements, lots of impact, and you know, just make space for his team and make things way easier for the likes of Pred and others to come through the pack. I know there was also some thoughts flying around lately as to which team out of the top 4 is most likely to disappoint. I think if I had to choose, I would probably lean towards the Subliners, just because it's the one change that the Sib for Priestahh thing, that's the one change that I'm not particularly sold on or convinced that it's guaranteed to be good. But, and maybe there's, you know, karma will come back to bite them in some sense. But every other team, I mean, like, I just can't see how, like, FaZe, there's no way they flop. And OpTic, you know, there's obviously a lot of confidence in their team every year, and it doesn't always work out. So there's always a chance on that one, I suppose. And maybe Toronto, there's a chance that CleanX and Envoy don't work as well as you might have thought. But I mean, still, it's difficult to say which of the top 4 teams aren't going to do as well, especially when you look at this SMG duo for OpTic. It's like, how can that team possibly not succeed on paper, as far as I'm concerned? But very much interested to your thoughts in the comments below. Just wanted to close out with this as well, a nice little Brian stat. Looking back on 10 years ago, the World Championship in 2013, OpTic versus Complexity. This was that famous series where Scump got the 3-piece on Aftermath, Search and Destroy to close it out in the $20,000 round of Search and Destroy, the Game 5, Round 11. And these were the numbers of those legendary teams with Scump, Nade, Merc, and Big T against Crim, Eggs, TP, and Too Quick, who was on the team, of course, before they brought in Clay, and then eventually they brought in Karma. But very much intrigued to your perspective in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.